Today, my featured guest is Savannah Dudzik, and she is a pro-life activist based out of Tampa, Florida, right here with me. She currently works in marketing for Live Action. She has a podcast, and she writes for a pro-life fashion company. She's also a pretty young, savvy female, right? Typically, when you think of activists in the pro-life movement, you think of, I don't know, grandma. You think of your nanny. And here she is, and I don't know her age yet, but she looks pretty young here. And she's out being courageous in the marketplace, protecting little babies. And
Well,
speaking, what's that?
I said thank you for that intro.
You're welcome. And speaking on behalf of their mommies. And she's really invested in both. And God has called her to something pretty great. The way she got on this show is she was speaking somewhere, and my wife ran into her. And my wife's like, Joseph, you got to have this girl on your show. And I was like, okay, fine. And here she is today, and we're gonna speak about what God's been doing in her life. What is He calling her to do in the lives of others? And BC Nation, as you're listening today, listen, abortion is a controversial subject, but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. It's a matter of conscience. You know what's right. You know what's wrong. Forget the political narrative. You know there's a baby inside a woman when you see that little baby bump on her. You know that's a baby. You know it's a human life coming out soon. And it has an entire life predestined by its creator. You know that. So why do we want to end that life? Why do we get pulled into the narrative of the evildoers that say, that's a clump of cells. There's nothing there. Well, so were you at one point. Would you call yourself a clump of cells now and give up all your rights? Come on. We got to just get right to the thing. Right to the thing. All right. So Savannah, welcome to Broken Catholic, #1 podcast on Apple for Protestants and Catholics. Go ahead and fill in some of the gaps in that intro, would you?
Well, thank you so much, Joseph. And I'm so blessed to be here, and I'm so excited for this conversation. I never would have thought that as a 21-year-old, I would be living in Tampa, Florida, across the country from my family, who lives up north. I grew up in the Chicagoland area, but now they live in Wisconsin. But God truly does great things with those who listen to Him, who listen to His voice, and who follow where He calls. And I'm just very blessed to be in this fight for the preborn, this fight that is, more relevant today than ever. It's always been an issue, and for the past 50 years. It has been something that, like you said, you might, especially 40 years ago, you might think of pro-life activists as your grandpa who goes outside an abortion clinic and prays, kind of not really in the young people's sphere. Mm-hmm. But in the past 10 years or so, I really think that young people have risen up. There are so many young people I know who work full-time in the pro-life movement. And it's because this really is an issue for young people. The people that Planned Parenthood is targeting are not the older people. I mean, the older people have a huge role to play in this, but Planned Parenthood is targeting people ages 18 to 24. That's the largest demographic of women who get abortions. And so we need to be the largest demographic of people who speak up and say that we don't want abortions, that we don't need abortion to be successful, and that America can do so much better for us.
Let's start right there. One of the biggest narratives that is pushed by the other side, by Planned Parenthood, is that if you have this baby or go through with this pregnancy, they don't use the word baby, obviously, but if you go through with this pregnancy, you're giving up the rest of your life. You're giving up all your hopes and dreams. And it's either you or this clump of cells. So why throw your life away? Just go ahead and take this pill or do this simple procedure, and we'll take care of it for you and give you your life back. That's pretty much what they're selling. Speak to that, would you? Why is
Right.
that
Well, I
true,
mean,
or why is that false?
there's so many aspects to that, but it's just completely false. It's just a lie because so one of the things about my background is I did crisis pregnancy counseling for a year about 2 years ago, and I saw in those conversations and those discussions with these women, the women who kept their babies, there are so many testimonies. There are thousands and millions of testimonies of these women saying, my life would not be what it was today if I didn't have this baby. Or I would have gone off the deep end even farther if I didn't have this baby. Like, this baby saved me. So first of all, there are so many of these stories. Second of all, it's a lie that you have an abortion and go back to daily life. They're selling you this lie that you can have this quote unquote procedure, right? And then the next day, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be the same. Well, if you look at it factually, if you end a human life inside of you, it doesn't make any sense that you're going to go back to daily life and everything's just going to be fine. There is the statistics on women who suffer from literally everything imaginable after abortion are insane. It's like the risk of suicide goes up like over 100%. The risk of mental health disorders is like 200%. The risk of infertility is like goes up 50%. All these statistics, all these crazy statistics that if you put this in front of any woman and said, look, like, does this look like something that's going to help you or harm you? And didn't tell them what it was, if you didn't tell them that it was abortion, they'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm staying away from whatever that is, right? So our culture is feeding us this narrative, and it just gets more and more ridiculous by the day. I don't know if you've heard, but the big thing right now is Walgreens and CVS are now selling the abortion pill. Mm-hmm. Now, some people think, oh, they're selling birth control, or oh, they're selling Plan B. No, they're selling the abortion pill. They're selling literally something that you take. It's 2 pills, actually. And you take it, and it basically gives a woman contractions, right? Gives a woman contractions and kills her baby, expels the baby in her bathroom. And she gets this from Walgreens without a prescription, without an ultrasound. She can take this and not even be pregnant. It's crazy. It's crazy how far the left has gone to normalize abortion and how many lives they're actually hurting and possibly killing from this. There've been many women who've died from the abortion pill, because who are you supposed to go to when you take an at-home abortion, which is what they, say that they're fighting against, is we don't want women to do it yourself abortions. That's literally what the abortion pill is. It's a do it yourself abortion. Who are you going to call when you take it when you're too far along, right? And you expel this actual baby in your toilet? You're going to call Walgreens? Like, what? That's ridiculous. So all this to say, there's this narrative. There's a few common narratives that the pro-choice movement, the pro-abortion movement has used for years now. And really, this past few years, we've come to realize how absolutely ridiculous they are, and how many people aren't even using these narratives anymore. They're saying, oh, look, actually it is a baby, but I can kill it because I want to have my life back. But I mean, you see, like I said, there are so many stories. Live Action just released this campaign last year called Can't Stay Silent. And it is the stories of women who have had abortions and how that's harmed them. So abortion does not help women, and there are crisis pregnancy centers. There are great organizations such as Let Them Live that will help women with literally anything they need during and after pregnancy.
Savannah, you brought up some powerful things that many of us may not know. I've recently heard about the Walgreens and CVS baby killing take-home pill that you could just pick up, right? You just pick up, right, take it home. And I think you bring up a good point. It's a reasonable point. What if something goes wrong at home, ladies, and you take this? Say you choose to take it, okay. And something goes wrong, like Savannah says. You're too far along. What if there's a complication? What if the baby doesn't fully come out? What if the baby gets stuck? What if there's major bleeding that happens? What if? There's a lot of what ifs that can happen with this. Who are you going to call?
Yeah, literally. And here's the thing. I mean, as women, like, I'll admit to this, read when I'm going to take some sort of medicine, some sort of Tylenol, sometimes I take an extra Tylenol, or sometimes I don't,
Yes.
read the like when you're supposed to take this exactly, right?
Mhm.
We sometimes as women, we're just like, we're going to do this and hopefully it works, right? What's to say, I mean, we don't even know yet what's going to happen, but I mean, I'm just guessing there's going to be so many women who don't look and just think you can take the abortion pill at any time, right?
Mhm.
And like it's going to be a mess. It's going to be even more of a mess than what we're already seeing, and it's just really so ironic to me because one of the hugest things right after Roe, I was at the Supreme Court right after Roe was overturned, sorry, during the Dobbs decision in June of this year. And one of the things that the pro-abortion people were screaming at me, were yelling at me, was, you're going to make women do at-home abortions now. Like, women are going to have to do at-home abortions. Well, what is this? It's an at-home abortion, and you're literally selling it to them. So what does this say? It says that you don't care about women. You care about making a profit. That's what you care about.
Mm. So Planned Parenthood definitely is the big gorilla that's pushing the entire abortion movement forward, right? And they're protected. They're like a protected sacred cow, and it's unfortunate, right? And they're well funded, they're loud, and the online platforms protect them, and anyone who speaks out against them can be canceled very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So fear is the weapon of choice. Fear is the weapon of choice. Whether it be your work with live action or your work as an activist just out on the streets, or, on sidewalks with people, how do you fight against such a scary weapon such as fear that's being used? And how do you have success with that?
Yes, that's a big question, and that's a big question that I think that all of us who work in the pro-life movement ask ourselves again and again, because there's this picture of the big scary Planned Parenthood industry, and I would argue as well. I wrote a blog post on this yesterday. The media, right? The media, and everyone's like, the media is so against us. The media is never going to cover us. Like, why should we even try? And there's a few things I'd like to say about this. One, in regards to this fear mechanism of Planned Parenthood's just huge. They control the online platforms. The media is controlled by pro-abortion people. My argument is, well, we need to be the media then. Why don't we spread the truth? Live action reaches millions of people with all their online platforms each. We reach millions of people because we have decided we are going to be the media, right? We are going to be that voice of truth in a culture of darkness, and we're gonna combat when things are released. There was this viral article by the Guardian a few months, actually probably like 6 months ago. I don't know if you heard about it, but it was a picture of what a baby looks like at 6 weeks, and it was like tissue. It was literal tissue. That's not scientifically accurate. Like, you look up on Google, what does a baby look like at 6 weeks? And it's like, a little baby form, right? So we said, no, Guardian, this is not accurate. This is not what a baby looks like. And we spread the truth. This is actually what a baby looks like. Now, in regards to fear and in regards to the scariness, because it is really scary. I had an experience with this last week. I was in Washington, D.C. for a week because the National March for Life was held, and we also had a bunch of different conferences. I spoke at some panels, and we did some undercover videos at the Women's March, the quote unquote Women's March, which is a very pro-abortion, very evil march that happens after the March for Life. Well, I had been to local women's marches before, but I'd never been to a national one. And the evil in that space is indescribable. These people, they're screaming, they're shouting profanities, they're like flailing their arms, they're pushing people. We had someone who had to get taken away by an ambulance because she was punched. The amount of evil is almost undescribable there, and that is a big question. Like, how do you deal with that? And especially people ask me because, like, there's a bunch of men there who are just like, just standing there and like, being stoic, but they're like, okay, how do you as a young woman deal with this? And the thing is, they use personal attacks as well. They'll attack your looks, they'll attack your marital status, they'll attack what you're doing with your life, right? As young women, it's hard enough for us to have good self-esteem. How do we handle when our self-esteem is totally just crushed, right? Theoretically, totally crushed by people who we don't even know. Well, I mean, the answer to that is prayer. If I didn't have a good prayer life, I would not be doing this stuff. If I didn't have a good prayer life, I would not be working in the pro-life movement. I would be working somewhere else. I'm just going to say that. I would not be doing this because it is truly, if you, and I've seen this, there's been times in my life when I have not had a good prayer life, and I've just been like so bogged down by my work, and I've not been sure why. And I'm just like, this is terrible. We're never going to end abortion. Like, what am I doing? But, you know, with prayer and with community as well, with having people of like-mindedness, and especially having women who are in this together, who are around my same age, that is just priceless. And that allows me and allows all of us to say, hey, we're doing this for a greater good. And people are going to attack us, but that's what Jesus says. You know, Jesus says you're going to be persecuted. If we weren't persecuted, we're doing something wrong. There's a good quote from Fulton Sheen that's, I think it's from Fulton Sheen. I could be wrong. If you don't stand for anything, or if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I'm pretty sure it's from a bunch of different people have said that quote, but regardless, it's true. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And there's a huge temptation to try to fit into the culture, you know, to just put my pro-life beliefs on the back burner, right? I don't have to tell everyone I meet what I believe, you know, but that's not the most fruitful and rewarding way to live, you know, and you see that. And once you start living that way, you'll see that it's a beautiful way to live. You know, there are going to be people who hate you, but those people who hate you, you know, maybe someday they'll figure out, you know, maybe she's onto something. So that's what I pray for.
Savannah, that's pretty awesome. So thank you for speaking to that and just your own challenges personally as a young lady, taking on all this fear from the other side, and realizing that your strength's not enough, right? So you rely on Christ and just making sure that you're always plugged into heaven in your prayer life as your source and never be the source, right? Because you just run dry. I agree completely with that. What specifically do you want to say to other young ladies out there or other young men as far as they feel like, I don't know my purpose, I don't think I'm being called to anything, right? They're not standing for anything, but they stand against everything, right? They have an opinion on every matter, but they actually stand for nothing.
That's interesting. Yeah.
What do you want to say to them? Is there an opportunity here in the protecting babies and mommy space for them to be called into and find fulfillment and find purpose and a community just like them and just like you?
Yeah. Well, I would say a few things on that. I would say, first of all, I don't find my purpose in my work. I don't find my purpose in the pro-life movement. I find my purpose in God, and God has called us to know, love, and serve him. That being said, there are ways that each person is called to do that. And I truly believe that every person is called, if every person recognized that there are over 2,000 people being killed in America every day, if every person actually could comprehend that, right? And saw that and was like, hey, like, this is extremely wrong. There was this one time I was giving a talk to middle schoolers, and I was like, I started the conversation with like, I'm so excited to be here, guys, but did you guys hear that there were 2,000 people killed today in America? And they were like, what? Like, no, I didn't know that. Once I explained to them, these middle schoolers, you know, how old are middle schoolers? They were, you know, 11, 12, 13. They were like, we got to do something. And if every person had that attitude of, we got to do something, like, our life's on hold until we end this. There's a Holocaust going on in America right now, this second. If everyone had that attitude, I think abortion would be over. I think abortion would be ended. I think that right now, one of the biggest things that you can do is get involved. And there are so many different ways. if you go to Live Action's website, there's opportunities to volunteer. If you look up local crisis pregnancy centers in your area, there's ways to volunteer. If you DM me, I will help you. I've helped so many people get involved in their local communities. If you're in Tampa, definitely reach out. But so that being said, my purpose is not in my work for the pro-life movement, but I do think that I'm fulfilling my purpose through being involved. But to young women, especially, there's a lot of pressures that society is putting on you, right? There's pressures to get married really young sometimes in the Christian Catholic community. There's those pressures, right? If you're not married by 21, there's something wrong with you. I've experienced that all growing up. There's that pressure. And there's pressures of, you need to find a really good job. You need, you should have a certain group of friends. And sometimes all those pressures put together were like, especially for young women, I've seen this in my friends. I see this in myself. I'm like, I can't handle all this. Like, this is too much. This is too much to deal with. And one thing that has really helped me is finding a good group of girls, finding a good community, because I have the tendency to say I can do it all myself, and that's not true. You need people in your life. And if you can't find a good community in person, find a community online. We have if you go to the Classy Chicks podcast Instagram, and start talking to some of the girls in the comments, they'll love talking to you. If you go there's another great Catholic podcast that I don't know if you've heard about, but it's two young Catholic women. They're a little older. They're in their early 30s. What in the Dang Hack podcast. They have a great community. Finding that community and finding those people who kind of have similar goals in life as you, that is definitely priceless. And that's something that I feel like some of these girls who I'm meeting who are kind of just like kind of lost and like unsure of where to go. Once you find people who are living their life for God, that you can live your life with, that's priceless.
Awesome. May I ask you some personal questions now?
Of course.
Excellent. How many do you have siblings?
I have 5 younger brothers. I love them all. They live up north, and I definitely miss them, but I go to see them every few months.
So you're the big sister.
Mm-hmm.
5 younger brothers. Awesome.
Yes, the youngest is 6. Well, he just turned 7.
Excellent. What faith denomination were you raised in?
Catholic. Roman Catholic.
Got it. All right. Excellent. And was that a difficult decision for your parents to agree with, for you to move to Tampa while the rest of the family stayed behind or moved?
No. So it's actually a little bit of a story. So right out of high school, I was going to community college, and I thought I wanted to be a teacher. An elementary school teacher. But then I was very involved in the pro-life movement growing up. My dad led our pro-life group at church, and my mom did phone calls for Aid for Women, which is a crisis pregnancy center. And so I always kind of knew about it and was involved, but it wasn't like at the forefront of my mind. It was kind of just something that I did for volunteering on the side. Well, once I got into college and I started up a Students for Life group at my college, I just saw dozens and dozens of women coming up every day, so confused. Like this was like 4 years ago. Nobody knew what was going on. Like nobody knew what abortion was. Nobody knew what the difference between Plan B and the abortion pill was. I was just like, oh my gosh, there's just such this lack of knowledge. I need to do something. So I was like, well, maybe I won't be a teacher. Maybe I will teach people about the pro-life movement. So I started looking and seeing ways I could get involved, and eventually I landed an internship with Illinois Right to Life, and then I went on to be the full-time communications assistant for a few years. I was working in downtown Chicago. It was great. I was kind of living this life of like this, city girl, working in the pro-life movement, but like also having a ton of fun in the city. It was wonderful. Well, this was also around COVID time and after COVID. And so Chicago, I don't know how much you've heard about Chicago, but Chicago is very dangerous right now. It was getting to be so dangerous that there was something terrible going on everywhere I went, every day, everywhere I went. And I was like, I cannot live as a young adult in this city. Like, it's just, I'm going to die, especially right as the Dobbs case was kind of coming down and like that kind of stuff. And I was also feeling like I needed to expand my reach, and I wanted to be in an area where there was a good conservative Christian presence and expand from there, because I was feeling like in the Chicagoland area, there's only so much you can do because of just all the rules and regulations. It's just not very compatible with Christian life, I felt. So I was like, well, I know I have friends, and I also have some extended family who live in Florida. And I was like, I'm just going to move down across the country and, embark on my own as a young person and start speaking in Tampa and grow from there. And my parents were extremely supportive. They're extremely supportive of my work. And I also continued working for Illinois Right to Life for a few months. So I was coming up almost every month. So long story short, my parents were very supportive. It is hard. I do miss my family, but I see them all the time. So it was a good decision.
That's pretty awesome. I wanted to ask you personally, in your prayer life, in your quiet time with God, what has He been telling you or asking you to do? What does He have next for you?
Well, I think it's funny because once in a while I think in my head, I have this little thought that, oh, I don't want to work in the pro-life movement anymore. I want to do something easier because it's difficult. Like I was saying before, it's difficult sometimes. And I'm like, oh, all my friends are just working these like corporate jobs or whatever, and they just get off work and they're just like free, and they don't have all these thoughts in their head constantly. There's not this news stuff that comes up that you have to fly somewhere, and like their life is just a lot easier. It seems to me, right? Mm-hmm. And then I start praying again, and I start reading my Bible, and I like to try to say a rosary every single day. And I know that's not where God's calling me. I know that's not where God's calling me. And I think that especially for a lot of young people, there's this temptation to try to find the easiest way to live, like what is the easiest way to live, and I don't think the easiest way is always the best way. And I think that I think that that's something God's been telling me lately, is that the easiest way is not always the best way, and a lot of the times it's not the best way at all.
For sure. I think chasing a passive life, passive income, all these things, though it sounds good and it's so attractive. I get to work with and coach a lot of the men that have achieved it, and they found comfort and financially, right, in their business, all of it, and they fill their life with pacifiers. Right. Of addictions and other things, because they're bored. They're just so bored and without purpose now. So it comes with a whole other set of challenges and struggles in their life. So I agree with you. There's parts of life that should be hard, that should be challenging, so that you're actually growing. And when you're not growing, you're dying, right? So this is the lie I think the enemy has, is like, especially for young people, like, you shouldn't have to take on, life shouldn't be hard. It should be comfortable. Right. It should be easy. And it's like, yeah, well, then you're just slowly dying, right? So
Exactly.
All right, Savannah, where have you resisted God's will in your life, if you don't mind me asking?
I mean, I will say that there is one thing that is a pattern over the past few years. I was in a very serious relationship, and I was going to get married, and that ended terribly. And I found my passion again. I found what I wanted to do. And one of the things that I think was not great about that time was I had this sort of toxic view towards men, right? I had this view that was, there's a lot of girls who are like, man crazy, like want to get married right away, like I was kind of saying earlier. But there's also the other side of women who are just like, have been so burned by men that they're just like, I don't want to have anything to do with the dating scene. I don't want to do that. And so I think that in the past, that was a pattern for me for a good 2 years. And in the past 6 months, I've been praying a lot and been like, okay, God, I'm ready for this again. If you want to open the door for me for that, then I'm ready for that. So that's one thing that I would encourage, young women, if you've been burned in the past by a guy, and this happens a lot when we're very young, I think, and when we have like our first love, and then it just goes south, and we're just like, I'm never gonna love again. Well, love is something given by God, and love is a gift, and marriage is a gift as well, and it's a good thing. And so I think that to just say all guys are bad, that's not a very Christian way of living, right? That's trying to hate half of the population. So that's one thing.
Thank you for sharing that with us. What would you say to the girl listening right now that she wants to get involved? You've mentioned a few things she could possibly do, but she's scared. She's scared to get involved. She's scared to take an action. Yet at the same time, she doesn't have anything else that she's really standing for in her life, and she's bogged down with just all the stress of her own challenges and just her own self-confidence and all the things that are fire hosed at her by society. Like, what do you want to say to that girl right now listening?
Yeah, I would say start reading. I would say there's this book called Fighting for Life. It's written by Lila Rose, and that book will tell you a personal story of Lila Rose's life and inspire you to get involved. So if you're just on the fence and you're just like, I don't know, like this sounds kind of scary, this sounds like a lot of commitment, read the book called Fighting for Life, or listen to Lila Rose's podcast, and you'll just hear the joy and the peace in her voice and the way that this has changed her life. Because yes, we are fighting for other people, but in doing things for others, we know that it does things for ourselves as well, right? Because we know that's what we're called to do. And I would just say, I say this a lot to some of my friends who are going through hard times, or like, that kind of stuff. Like, well, let's go like volunteer at a food pantry, or let's go help these people move, right? Because helping others helps yourself.
Absolutely. And it helps you forget about your problems, doesn't it?
That's true.
It really does. Because then you see, wow, these people have it way worse than me. And then you feel instant gratitude. It's awesome.
I mean, yeah.
Savannah, we have a lot of moms and dads, parents on this show that listen to the show, and they're hearing you right now, and they're like, wow, how do I raise my children to want to go out and fight for God and fight for life and fight to protect babies and moms? Like, how do I inspire my kids to do that when all they want to do is play video games or something else, just be online on their phones constantly? What advice would you give to the moms and dads out there from a young person's perspective that your mom and dad did really well and it impacted you in a positive way?
I mean, I wouldn't be the person I was today if it wasn't for my parents and for my family. And especially my dad. I would say I would not be working in the pro-life movement if it wasn't for my dad. And I don't think that I would be, I don't even know that I would be as solid in my faith if it wasn't for my family. My parents did a lot of things different in society. You can't raise your children in this culture of death in a culturally sound way, right? You can't raise your children in the way that the culture is telling you and then expect them to come out different than what the rest of the culture is. You can't do that. And so my parents did a lot of things, right? We all helped around the house. I learned to cook from a very young age. We had a lot of land. My brothers learned how to garden. My dad taught them how to garden. They had ATV. They learned how to do things. None of my family, none of my brothers or myself played video games. We don't have video games, right? So they didn't even have that option to get sucked into that. I didn't get a cell phone until I was a senior in high school, which is kind of crazy now. And looking back, maybe I'll give my kid a phone when they're like 16. But phones are addicting, right? We know that. Even as adults, we know that. I have to be on my phone and my computer almost all day for work, but it's still addicting, like personally. And so the longer you can wait, the longer you can have your kid grow up in sort of a natural order, of reading, right? My parents definitely my mom especially fostered a love of reading in us. We had so many books that the house was full of books. Prayer. We say prayers ever since I can remember before. Well, we say the bless us, O Lord prayer before dinner. Just the classic meal prayer. But then we also do more. We do like the saint of the day. We do they pray a decade of the rosary. Just fostering that beauty and that beauty of being a family. We had dinner together every single night. Some people weren't always home, especially when we got to high school, we weren't always home, but my mom always made an effort to have dinner for us every single night. There are things that you can do as a family to foster that desire in your child to do something greater. My dad, when I would drive places with my dad, we'd be listening to podcasts, a lot of the times we'd be listening to the radio, to Catholic radio, and he'd ask me about it. And I think that sometimes parents just kind of give up and are just like, well, we live in a corrupt society, right? Like the society is just going to corrupt our kids. Well, no, if you teach your kids that society is corrupt and that this is a more beautiful way to live, your kids will see that, right? Your kids will see that and they'll take that. And then the other thing is letting them take that, right? And once, whenever the right time is, when they're in high school, when they're a little out of high school, not being like, okay, you still have to be under my roof, right? Not being that parent who's like afraid of society almost, because we were always in society, but not of it, right? We were always involved doing things, but my parents we had a very clear distinction of what was good and what was evil. So not keeping your kids from society, but teaching them how to live as a Christian in society. That's what I would say.
That's powerful. Thank you for that. I think a lot of parents are confused and feel overwhelmed by the darkness that's spreading around them. Mm-hmm. And they want to give up. They're like, what's the point? Like, I can't win against all of this.
Right.
And I think that's a powerful conversation that you're bringing up is to say, listen, you don't have to win against all of this. You just got to pour good and beauty and natural order into your children.
Right.
That's it.
Right. That's all you need to do. You need to foster your family and then teach your family how to live that in society. Because if you try to change it's kind of the same thing with the pro-life movement, right? We can't give up. We can't say, oh, the media is going to win against us, right? Oh, the culture is going to win against us, because the minute we give up, the culture does, because the culture is strong. The media is strong. But when we fight against it, when we say, no, we're going to be different, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Something that's always encouraged me when I feel overwhelmed from the darkness around is how much darkness is actually required to consume the light versus how little light is required to light up the darkness.
Oh, that's very interesting.
It is very interesting. Like, if you just look, like one little flick of light in the corner of a fully dark room takes away the darkness. And you can see, right? But you need the entire room 100% full to capacity with darkness in order to quench the light. So that's encouraging that it only takes one of us, just one light, to bring God's light into, it doesn't matter how big the darkness is. As long as you bring his light in, the darkness cannot, it's impossible for the darkness to consume the light.
Wow.
Like that's really cool. So Savannah, I just want to speak that into you, that encouragement, that no matter where God's calling you, if you just show up with that light of God that your parents instilled in you, which was a gift, and you just walk that in every room you go into, the darkness can never win in that room, ever.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Because you're there. And I want each of you listeners to remember that. Every room you walk into, if you're plugged into heaven, you win. You win, and the enemy runs every single time. So I think the enemy's biggest lie is that we're weak and that he's stronger. One of his biggest lies. And God's truth is that you have the power of God. And you walk in his authority. And the second you just call upon him, the enemy runs like a coward. And I think we need that kind of spiritual confidence in whatever it is we're being called into. And to never shudder at the darkness, never shudder at the enemy and cringe when you see them, but say, I don't fear the darkness. I fear no one. Nothing keeps me up at night. I keep the evil one up at night.
Right.
He's thinking of ways, right? Like I scare him. I bring God's fear into him. So I just want to speak that into everyone listening right now and just change that narrative that you're the one with the power. You're the one with the light. You're not victim to it, any of it. Savannah, what do you want to say to our listeners as we wrap up our conversation today?
Yeah, I would just say a few things. I would say it's like we were talking about before. It's easy to say, oh, we live in a terrible culture. We live in a culture of death. But the truth is, there's a verse from Esther 4:14, I believe. Perhaps you were born for such a time as this. And I think that each one of us was put in this time and place for a reason. God put us in this century. There's this trend going around on Instagram that's like reasons why I'm not supposed to be here, or like reasons why I'm not supposed to be in this century. And like it's kind of funny because people like put pictures of them, theoretically them in like the 17th century or whatever. It's kind of funny, but it's like, no, we like, you are supposed to be here. Like God put you here for a reason. You shouldn't be saying you're not supposed to be here because the divine creator put you here. So I would encourage everyone to remember that perhaps you were born for such a time as this, and to feel free to reach out to me if you want to talk, especially if you're a young person, if you want advice, if you want help. I love talking to people. So feel free to reach out to me on my Instagram at sav.speakslife or my podcast at Classy Chicks Pod on Instagram. And the other thing about being involved in the pro-life movement, sometimes if you're involved, or if you're thinking about getting involved, sometimes you can get caught up in, well, I'm not going to end abortion in America. And it's true. None of us are going to end abortion on our own. But there's this wonderful quote that says, whoever saves one life saves the world entire. And it just kind of means if you save one life, that's one life that's going to live for eternity, right? That's not just like you're making a little difference today. You're making a difference for every single day of that person's life. And then afterwards, when they hopefully live in heaven and you hopefully get to meet them, like that's amazing. I have women who I helped like 3 years ago who are sending me baby pictures. Well, not baby pictures anymore. Their kids are like 2 years old. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like by that conversation, I helped make a difference in that person's life. And you have the potential to do that as well, and you just need to start learning and start doing. And so my advice to people would be, don't sit back another day. Today, do something to make a difference in this world.
All right, BC Nation, Savannah's calling us out, right? Do something more than nothing. And she's challenging you and I to stop trying to get more followers and fans on social and start trying to get more followers and fans in heaven. Like ones that are going to live on forever, and you're going to meet them and they're going to come to you and say, oh my gosh, I'm your biggest fan. You saved my life. You saved my baby. Like, this is what we're called to, right? Eternity, eyes on eternity, eyes on eternity. It's so important to remind ourselves of that. Savannah, we're about to enter my favorite part of the show. Welcome to the confession round. I'm going to ask you.
Oh, no, I read about this.
I heard about this. It's infamous. I'm going to ask you 10 quick fire questions. You'll have about 3 seconds to answer each. Okay. Don't overthink it. It's just for fun. It's like a game show without the prizes. Are you ready?
Yep.
Let's go. What is your favorite thing about God?
His infiniteness.
See how easy that was? What is your least favorite thing about God?
The fact that sometimes it feels like you can't hear him.
Yeah, I agree. And I believe we're all struggling with something at any given moment of our life. It's just part of the human condition. What are you currently challenged with right now, either professionally or personally?
Well, that's a big one. A lot of things. But this morning my oatmeal exploded in the microwave, so I have to go clean that up after this.
That was funny. Okay, got it. What are you most afraid of?
Oh, hell, that's for sure. Hell and demons and the devil.
Got it. Okay. What did you spend way too much time doing this past year?
Um, Overthinking my life, probably.
Like every other young person ever.
Yeah.
um, excuse me. What secret fear do you have about people?
Oh, I mean, I don't know that this is secret, but I always overthink if people like me or not when they meet me.
The answer is yes.
Yes,
Is
that
that
they.
helpful?
Oh, okay.
Yes, they like you. Right? You could just use that, apply that answer to the rest of your life,
Yeah,
okay? And you'll be
right.
fine, okay? All right. My video is doing funny things here. And what do you wish you had learned sooner about God?
Um, I wish I had understood that you can like that you don't have to say specific prayers to him, that you can just like talk to him more. I guess I wish I had understood that in my brain. I feel like I didn't really comprehend that.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Right? God just wants the open heart, right? Like just real.
Right.
Tell him what's real. Tell him
Hmm.
what you're dealing with, what you're scared of. What's a new habit you're going to create this year?
Oh, I'm trying to go to my Pilates class 3 times a week. That is something that I'm doing because I was going like once last year and it was fine, but I'm trying to go more
All
and
right.
drinking more water.
Drinking more water. Let's
Because
go.
I live
What's
in
it?
Florida and it's hot and I tend to get dehydrated.
You just pissed off most of America who's freezing right now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
What's a bad habit you're going to break? You got me using the word try now. What's a bad habit
Uh,
you're going to break?
I think that, and I mean, this is a whole discussion, but I think that it's important for young people to like get dressed and like put themselves together every day, even if there's not something necessarily going on. So one bad habit I'm going to break is I work from home. And so sometimes I don't get dressed and don't do my hair or anything. And I'm going to do that this year.
Mm, yeah, for sure. Rolling out of bed in your PJs,
Yeah. It's something
showing up in life like you would show up at Walmart. Unacceptable.
that's a good quote. Yes.
Unacceptable. If you could come back to life and after you died and tell your family and friends only one piece of advice about God and relationship with Him, what would you say to them?
Oh, I mean, I don't know because I haven't died yet.
If this is a
Like,
hypothetical.
um, I mean, I'm sure heaven's going to be more than anyone could ever think of. So I'm sure I would tell them that any struggle they're going through right now is going to be worth it. Probably.
Probably.
Well, I don't know yet. I mean, I think
Wow,
so.
that certainty is encouraging. All right. Savannah, this is the time of the show where you get to offer BC Nation a homework assignment for this week. What is one action they must take this week if they want to grow closer to God and hear His plan for their life the way you've heard yours?
I just encourage everyone. There's so many things I could say right now, but I don't know. Read a chapter of your Bible. Like open up. I do this a lot, and like it's actually really cool. Open up your Bible to a specific, like just a random place, and read whatever chapter is closest to you.
Okay, there you have it.
I've gotten some good advice that way.
All right, BC Nation, if you enjoyed this show with Savannah, please go write an honest review for her. You could do that at Apple Podcasts. You could do it at Stitcher.com, or you could go to brokencatholic.com, and write your honest review. If we like what you write, I will read it live on the show and give you a shout out, which I'm about to do for handle Doc FSK. Doc FSK. Thank you for your 5-star review. Inspirational podcast, Broken Catholic. I love how Joseph features speakers from various walks of life and offers not only an array of topics, but also their journeys in faith. His questions are thoughtful and thought provoking. If you listen, you will encounter the one who first loved you, God. That's awesome. Thank you, Doc FSK, for your 5-star review. Go write yours right now for Savannah. She showed up powerfully. She's a young lady on a mission for God. She's helping women and babies and also their dads, right? We didn't speak about the dads, but I've done that on other shows. And the dads are a major part of this, right?
100%.
In the pro life movement. Savannah, where does BC Nation go to find out more about you and get involved with you? What do you got?
So my Instagram handle is at sav.speakslife. My website is savspeakslife.com. My podcast is at Classy Chicks Pod. And then if you want to find out about live action, their Instagram is, wait one second. It's liveaction.org. And then the other thing that I didn't talk about much today, my fashion brand, Culture of Life Fashion 1972. It's not my fashion brand. I write for them. They're a pro-life fashion brand. They're Culture of Life Fashion on Instagram. But if you just message me at Sav Speaks Life, I can also help you get to any of those places.
Savannah, thank you for being on Broken Catholic. I wish you God's love, peace, and joy in your life.
Thank you so much for having me.